Commander Jake Morrison watched through the big window of his ship. Far away in space, he could see broken alien ships moving slowly toward Earth. The ships looked damaged and old. Some had big holes in their sides. Others moved like they might fall apart at any moment. Jake had never seen anything like this before. Alien ships were made of some kind of crystal that caught the light from Earth's sun. Even though they were broken, they were still beautiful. The aliens inside these ships were called the Zelhari. They were running away from their home planet because bad things had happened there. His communication officer turned to him. "Sir, we're getting messages from the alien ships. They're asking for help." Jake nodded. "Tell them we're here to help. Guide them to Station Alpha. Make sure they know they're safe now." The Zelhari had left their world 3 weeks ago. Jake had read the reports about what happened to them. A mean group called the Korthak Empire had attacked their planet. The Korthak were big reptile creatures who liked to hurt other aliens and take their things. They had destroyed the Zelhari cities and taken many of the crystal people as slaves. Down in the medical bay of Jake's ship, Dr. Lisa Chang was working hard. She was trying to figure out how to help the hurt Zelhari. The crystal aliens were very different from humans. Their bodies were made of living crystal instead of flesh and blood. When they got hurt, they didn't bleed. Instead, their crystal parts would crack or break off. Lisa had been working for days without much sleep. She had 4 Zelhari patients in her medical bay. One of them was very sick. His crystal body was turning dark, which meant he was dying. Lisa had tried everything. She knew, but human medicine didn't work on crystal beings. Then she had an idea. She remembered that crystals could be fixed with the right kind of energy. She took a small device that doctors use to heal broken bones in humans. She changed the settings and pointed it at the sick Zelhari. The crystal alien's body began to glow. The dark parts became clear again. His crystal song, which had been weak and sad, became strong and beautiful. Lisa had done it. She had found a way to heal the Zelhari. On the bridge, Captain Ryan Brooks was reading a message from Earth. The leaders of all the human worlds had made a decision. They would help the Zelhari refugees. Earth would give them a place to live and protect them from the Korthak Empire. Ryan smiled when he read this. It was the right thing to do. The Zelhari were good people who had never hurt anyone. They were artists and musicians who made beautiful crystal gardens on their world. They didn't deserve what the Korthak had done to them, far away from Earth. Near the edge of human space, Admiral Helen Torres was meeting with other human military leaders. She had just come back from a trip to the Korthak Empire. She had gone there to try to talk peace with them, but the meeting had gone very badly. The Korthak leader called War Master Victor had laughed at her. He told her that humans were weak and soft. He said the Korthak would take whatever they wanted from the galaxy. When Helen asked about the Zelhari people, Victor said they made good slaves because they were quiet and did what they were told. Helen had seen the Korthak prison, camps where they kept aliens they had captured. The conditions were terrible. Aliens were forced to work in dangerous mines and factories. Many died from the hard work and bad treatment. The Korthak didn't care. They said weak species deserved to be slaves to strong ones. Now Helen was back in human space, and she was angry. She told the other military leaders what she had seen.
Ow.
The humans needed to be ready to fight. The Korthak Empire was planning to attack more worlds. They wanted to capture more aliens to use as slaves. Meanwhile, on Earth, something very special was happening. The leader of the Zelhari refugees was meeting with the president of Earth. The Zelhari leader was called Resonant Sov Morning Light. The crystal being was tall and thin, and when it spoke, it sounded like beautiful music. President Karen Williams sat across from the alien leader in the White House. Between them was a special machine that could change the Zelhari's crystal song into words that humans could understand. "We thank you for saving our people," said Resonance of Morning Light. The crystal being's body glowed brighter as it spoke. No other species in the galaxy would help us. They were all afraid of the Korthak Empire. President Williams leaned forward. "We're not afraid of bullies. When we see someone picking on innocent people, we step in to help. That's just who we are." The Zelhari leader's crystal body made soft musical sounds that meant it was happy. "We would like to be friends with humanity forever. We can teach you about crystal technology." We can help you build better ships and weapons. In return, you protect us from those who would hurt us." President Williams smiled. "We would be honored to be your allies." The next day, newspapers all over Earth carried the same story. Humanity had made its first real alliance with an alien species. The Zelhari would share their advanced technology with humans. In return, humans would protect the Zelhari from anyone who tried to hurt them. Not everyone in the galaxy was happy about this news. The dark ships of the Korthak Empire, War Master Vector read the reports with anger. Humans had taken away his slaves and were now protecting them. This could not be allowed to continue. The reptilian leader called his generals together. "The humans think they can protect the crystal creatures," he hissed. "We will show them what happens when someone gets in our way. Prepare the fleet. We will teach these soft humans a lesson they will never forget." But the Korthok had made a big mistake. They thought humans were weak because they helped others instead of taking what they wanted. They would soon learn that humans could be very dangerous when protecting their friends. Colonel Steve Martinez stood on the bridge of his ship, the EU's Vigilant. This was the first time humans and Zelhari had worked together on a mission. Half of his crew were humans. The other half were crystal beings who had joined the human military. The ship itself was special too. Human engineers had worked with Zelhari builders to make something new. The ship had human weapons and engines, but it also had Zelhari crystal shields that could stop almost any attack. The crystal technology made the ship much stronger than normal human ships. Steve looked at his crystal partner, a Zelhari named Song of Steel and Stars. The alien was his second in command. When Song of Steel and Stars spoke, it sounded like music, but Steve had learned to understand the meanings. "Darnell," Martinez sang the crystal being, "we are getting close to Harmony Station. It should be just ahead." Harmony Station was a trading post run by a peaceful alien race called the Mirathi. The blue-skinned aliens were traders who sold goods to different species across the galaxy. They never fought with anyone and always followed the old galactic laws that said trading posts were safe places. But as the UES Vigilant got closer to the station, Steve could see something was very wrong. The station was dark. No ships were moving around it.
Oh.
No radio signals were coming from it. The whole area was quiet and empty. "Take us closer," Steve ordered. "But keep our weapons ready." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was working at the communications station. She was trying to contact the station, but no one was answering. Then she found something that made her face turn pale. "Sir," Amy said in a quiet voice, "I'm picking up old radio messages. They're 3 days old. It's a distress call from the station." Steve walked over to Amy's station. "Let me hear it." The voice that came through the speakers was scared and full of panic. It was a Mirathi trader speaking in broken English. "Help. Us? Ships attacking? Big reptile creatures with weapons? They're taking our people. Someone please help." Then the message cut off. After that, there was only silence. Steve felt anger building in his chest. The Korthok had attacked a peaceful trading station. They had hurt innocent people who never did anything wrong to anyone. "Take us to the station," Steve ordered. "I want to see what happened." When the UES Vigilant reached Harmony Station, Steve and his team put on spacesuits and went inside. What they found made them sick to their stomachs. The station had been torn apart. Doors were blown open.
Ow.
Walls had holes burned through them. There were signs of fighting everywhere, but it hadn't lasted long. The peaceful Mirathi had no weapons to defend themselves. Dr. Carl Watson was the science officer on Steve's team. He studied the damage and the evidence left behind. Carl was an expert on different alien species, and he could tell what had happened. Just by looking at the scene, the Korthok used their standard attack pattern, Carl told Steve. They hit fast and hard. Mirathi never had a chance to fight back or escape. Carl showed Steve burn marks on the walls. "Hey, these are from Korthok. Energy weapons. But look at this." He pointed to some strange green stains on the floor. "This is from bioweapons. Illegal weapons that cause terrible pain before killing." Steve knelt down to look at the stains. He had heard about Korthok bioweapons in military reports. They were banned by every civilized species in the galaxy because they were so cruel. The weapons didn't just kill people quickly, they made them suffer for a long time before they died. Meanwhile, Amy had found the station's main computer. Most of it was destroyed, but she was able to get some information from it. What she found made everyone angry. Colonel Amy called out, "I found something!" The station's security cameras recorded the attack. The team gathered around Amy's portable computer to watch the recording. On the screen, they could see Korthok soldiers breaking into the station. The reptilian creatures were big and strong, with tough scales covering their bodies. They carried advanced weapons and wore heavy armor. But what made the humans angry was how the Korthok acted. They didn't just take what they wanted and leave. They seemed to enjoy hurting the Marathi traders and some of the blue-skinned aliens tried to hide. The Korthok soldiers laughed as they dragged them out. The recording showed Korthok soldiers loading hundreds of Marathi onto their ships. The peaceful traders were put in cages like animals. Some of the Marathi were hurt or sick, but the Korthok didn't care. They just threw them into the cages with the others. Then the team heard something that made their blood boil. Amy had found a Korthok radio message that was sent during the attack. She played it for everyone to hear. The voice belonged to War Master Victor, the Korthok leader. He was talking to his soldiers and laughing about how easy the attack had been. "Look at these soft creatures," Victor's voice said through the speakers. "They beg for mercy like children. We will sell them in the slave markets for good prices. The buyers like aliens who are already broken and scared." Steve had to take deep breaths to control his anger. Song of Steel and Stars was glowing bright red, which meant the crystal being was furious too. But the message wasn't over. Victor kept talking. "This is what happens to all the weak species in this galaxy. They exist only to serve the strong. Soon we will teach the same lesson to those crystal creatures and their new human friends." Amy turned off the recording. The whole team was quiet for a moment. They had seen the evidence of Korthok cruelty with their own eyes. Innocent people had been taken as slaves just because they couldn't fight back. Steve made a decision. "Amy, send an emergency message to Earth Command. Tell them what we found here. Include all the evidence and recordings." As Amy worked on the message, Steve looked out at the empty space around the station. Somewhere out there, hundreds of Marathi were being taken to slave markets. It would be sold like property to anyone who wanted to buy them. But Steve also knew something else. When Earth Command saw this evidence, they would be just as angry as his team was. Humans didn't like bullies. They especially didn't like bullies who hurt innocent people for fun. The Korthok thought they could do whatever they wanted because they were strong. They thought no one would stand up to them. But they were about to learn something important about humans. When humans made friends with someone, they protected those friends. And when someone hurt their friends, humans got very dangerous very quickly. The evidence from Harmony Station would change everything. The galaxy was about to see. What happened when you made humanity angry? Ambassador Tony Clark walked into the biggest meeting room he had ever seen. The Galactic Council Hall on Nexus Prime was huge. Hundreds of alien species had representatives sitting in the curved rows of seats. Each species looked different from the others. Some were tall, some were short, some had fur, others had scales or smooth skin. Tony was here to speak for humanity. He carried with him the evidence that Colonel Martinez had found at Harmony Station. The videos and recordings would show everyone what the Korthok Empire was really like. As Tony walked to the speaking platform in the center of the room, he could feel all the alien eyes watching him. Most of these species had been dealing with the Korthok problem for years. But instead of fighting back, they had chosen to stay quiet and hope the Reptilian Empire would leave them alone. The council leader, an old alien with 4 arms and purple skin, called the meeting to order. Ambassador Clark of Earth will now address the council about recent events in the Outer Rim. Tony stepped up to the microphone. His voice was calm and clear as he spoke to the hundreds of aliens listening to him. "Members of the Galactic Council," Tony began. 3 days ago, the Korthok Empire attacked Harmony Station. They destroyed a peaceful trading post and took hundreds of innocent Marathi as slaves. Some of the aliens in the audience made sounds of concern, but Tony noticed that many just sat quietly. They had heard stories like this before. Tony continued his speech. The attack was not about military strategy or territory. It was about cruelty. The Korthok used illegal bioweapons on civilians. They took pleasure in causing pain and fear. He pressed a button on his control device. The big screens around the hall showed the security videos from Harmony Station. Aliens in the audience watched in silence as Korthok soldiers dragged screaming Mirathi from their hiding places. But Tony was just getting started. He had come here to make a very important announcement. From this day forward, Tony said, his voice getting stronger, humanity officially declares the Zelhari people to be our protected allies. Any attack on Zelhari territory or citizens will be considered an act of war against Earth. The reaction in the hall was immediate. Some aliens gasped in surprise. Others started talking to each other in worried voices. A few species applauded, but most looked scared. Tony wasn't finished. This protection extends to any species that seeks alliance with humanity. We will not stand by and watch bullies hurt innocent people. In the section where the Korthok representatives sat, Ambassador Sekthon stood up. The big reptilian creature hissed with what sounded like laughter. "The humans amuse me," Sekthon said in his rough voice. "You are children playing with toys. The Korthok Empire has conquered 17 worlds. We have fleets that could destroy your entire solar system." Sekthon's yellow eyes looked directly at Tony. "What can one young species do against the might of our empire? Your ships are few, and your soldiers are untested." Tony looked back at the Korthok ambassador without showing any fear. "You're about to find out." The meeting continued for several more hours. Many species spoke about the Korthok problem, but most of them just complained. They didn't offer any solutions or promise to help fight back. When the meeting was over, Tony felt disappointed. He had hoped more species would join humanity in standing up to the Korthok. Instead, most of them seemed more afraid than ever. But Tony didn't know that. His speech had been broadcast across the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, aliens who had suffered under Korthok attacks were watching. For the first time in years, someone had stood up to the reptilian empire, back in human space. Something amazing was happening. Admiral Kate Young was in charge of the biggest military project in Earth's history. Every shipyard around Earth and the moon was working day and night to build new warships. But these weren't just regular human ships. Zelhari engineers were working alongside human builders. They were creating vessels that used both human technology and crystal science. Kate stood in the main shipyard, orbiting the moon, watching workers put together a new type of warship. The ship had the sleek design of human engineering, but crystal panels covered its hull. The crystals would make the ship's shields much stronger than anything humans had built before. "How many ships will be ready in 2 weeks?" Kate asked her. "Chief engineer. 47 battle cruisers and 23 destroyers," the engineer replied. "The crystal technology is making them faster and more powerful than we expected." Kate smiled. The Korthok thought humans were weak because they helped. Others, instead of taking what they wanted, they were about to learn that humans could build an impressive fleet when they needed to protect their friends. Meanwhile, Captain Ben Price was running secret missions in Korthok space. His job was to rescue slaves from Korthok's prison worlds. It was dangerous work. But Ben had volunteered because he couldn't stand the thought of innocent aliens suffering in Korthok camps. Ben's ship, the UES Shadow, was small and fast. It was painted black and had special equipment that made it hard for enemy sensors to detect. Ben and his crew had already rescued 3 groups of enslaved aliens from different Korthok worlds. Tonight, they were approaching a prison world called Torment. Ben knew the name wasn't a coincidence. Korthok had chosen it because they wanted everyone to know what happened to aliens who opposed them. "Captain," said his communications officer, "we're picking up signals from the planet. There are definitely prisoners down there."
Yes.
Ben studied the information on his screens. The prison complex was heavily guarded, but Ben and his team had dealt with worse situations before. "Get ready for the rescue operation," Ben ordered. "We're going down there to bring those people home." As Ben's team prepared for their mission, they thought about the message Ambassador Clark had delivered to the Galactic Council. Humanity had drawn a line in the sand. They had told the galaxy that attacking their friends would bring consequences. Some aliens thought humans were making empty threats. Others wondered if humans really had the strength to back up their words. But on worlds across the galaxy, enslaved, aliens were starting to hope again. Maybe someone really would come to save them. Maybe the Korthok Empire's days of terrorizing innocent species were finally coming to an end. The Korthok leaders were not worried yet. They still thought humans were just making noise. War Master Victor was already planning his response to humanity's challenge, but they had made a critical mistake. They thought humans were weak because they cared about others. They didn't understand that caring about others could make humans very dangerous enemies. The galaxy was about to learn an important lesson about humanity when humans said they would protect their friends. They meant it. And when humans made a promise, they would do whatever it took to keep it. War Master Victor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dark Talon. Around him, hundreds of Korthok warships moved through space like a swarm of angry insects. This was the largest fleet the Reptilian Empire had ever assembled. Vacta had brought enough firepower to destroy an entire solar system. His target was New Harmony, a world where Zelhari refugees had built a new home. The crystal beings had been living there peacefully for 6 months, growing their beautiful crystal gardens and making music that could be heard across the planet. Victor's plan was simple. He would attack the world and capture all the Zelhari living there, and he would sell them as slaves to show the galaxy what happened to species that allied with humans. It would be a lesson everyone would remember. War Master, said his second-in-command, we are approaching the target world. Our scouts report only light defenses. Victor hissed with pleasure. The humans had promised to protect the crystal creatures. But where were their ships? He saw only a few small patrol vessels orbiting New Harmony. The human fleet was nowhere to be found. The humans are cowards, Vector said to his officers. They make big speeches but run away when real fighting starts. Begin the attack. The Korthok fleet opened fire on New Harmony. Energy beams and missiles rained down on the planet's surface. The beautiful crystal cities that the Zelhari had built began to explode and crumble. Gardens that had taken months to grow were destroyed in seconds. On the surface of New Harmony, Zelhari families ran for cover. Their crystal bodies glowed with fear as Korthok weapons destroyed everything around them. Many crystal beings were caught in the explosions. Their bodies cracked and shattered, their music silenced forever. Song dash of dash ancient dash wisdom, the leader of the New Harmony colony, sent out desperate radio calls for help. This is New Harmony calling all human ships. We are under attack. The Korthok are bombing our cities. Please help us. The only human ship in the area was the UES Guardian, a small patrol vessel commanded by Lieutenant Commander Dan Wright. Had only 50 crew members and a few light weapons. Against the massive Korthok fleet, his ship was like a tiny bug facing a giant. But Don didn't run away. Instead, he moved his ship between the Korthok fleet and the planet. He sent a message to all the attacking ships. This is the U.S. Guardian to all Korthok vessels. You are attacking citizens under the protection of Earth. Stop your attack immediately or face the consequences. The Korthok officers on Victor's ship laughed when they heard Dan's message. One small human ship was threatening their entire fleet. Destroy that pathetic vessel, Victor ordered. Show them what happens to humans who get in our way. Korthok destroyers turned their weapons on the U's Guardian. The human ship's shields glowed bright blue as the enemy weapons hit them. Dan's ship shook from the impact, but the crystalline-enhanced shields held strong. Dan fired back with everything he had. His ship's weapons were small compared to the Korthok fleet, but they were more accurate than the enemy expected. 2 of the attacking destroyers took heavy damage before they could retreat, but Dan knew he couldn't hold out for long. His ship was tough, but it was still just one vessel against hundreds. He sent an emergency signal that would reach every human ship in the galaxy. This is Guardian to all human forces. The Zelhari are under attack at New Harmony. We need immediate assistance. The Korthok have brought their entire fleet. The message traveled through space at light speed, reaching human commanders across the galaxy. On Earth, Admiral Kate Young received the signal while reviewing battle plans. Her face went pale as she listened to Dan's report. "How long until our fleet reaches New Harmony?" she asked her staff. 12 hours at maximum speed," came the reply. Kate felt sick to her stomach. In 12 hours, the Korthok could kill every Zelhari on New Harmony. The crystal beings were counting on humanity to protect them. But the human fleet was too far away. But Kate didn't know that Admiral Pete Johnson was closer than anyone thought. Pete had been leading the Fifth Fleet on patrol near the Outer Rim. When he received Dan's distress call, his ships were only 2 hours away from New Harmony. Pete stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, studying the tactical information his scouts had gathered. The Korthok fleet was huge, but Pete had studied their fighting methods for months. He knew their weaknesses. "All ships, this is Admiral Johnson," Pete announced over the fleet communications. "The enemy thinks they can hurt our friends and get away with it. They're about to learn how wrong they are." Back at New Harmony, Dan was still fighting against impossible odds. His ship had taken heavy damage, but he refused to retreat. Every minute he held the Korthok fleet's attention was another minute for Zelhari, civilians to find shelter. On the planet's surface, Korthok landing ships were beginning to arrive. Reptilian soldiers poured out of the ships, hunting for Zelhari to capture. But they found something they didn't expect. Some of the Zelhari. Refugees were veterans who had fought against the Korthok before. These crystal warriors had lost everything once already. They were not going to let it happen again without a fight. Song of Steel and Stars, who had served with Colonel Martinez, led a group of Zelhari defenders. The crystal beings used their knowledge of their own world to set up ambushes for the Korthok soldiers. When Korthok troops entered the crystal forests, they found themselves lost in a maze of reflecting surfaces. The Zelhari could move through their crystal cities like ghosts, appearing and disappearing without warning. But the real surprise came when Admiral Johnson's fleet arrived. Human ships dropped out of hyperspace right in the middle of the Korthok formation. The reptilian fleet had been spread out to bomb the planet. They were not ready for a coordinated attack. "All ships, fire at will," Pete ordered. The human fleet struck like lightning. Their ships were smaller than the Korthok vessels, but they were faster and more maneuverable. The crystal-enhanced weapons that Zelhari engineers had helped design cut through Korthok armor like it was paper. Vector couldn't believe what was happening. His massive fleet was being torn apart by a smaller human force. The reptilian commander had expected an easy victory, but the humans were fighting with a fury he had never seen before. "How are they so strong?" Vector hissed to his officers. Their ships were supposed to be inferior to ours. What Vector didn't understand was that the human ships were powered by more than just technology. Every human crew member was fighting to protect innocent people who had asked for their help. That gave them a strength that no amount of weapons could match. The battle raged for hours. In space above New Harmony, human and Korthok ships fought desperately. On the planet's surface, Zelhari defenders held off landing parties with help from human marines who had dropped from Pete's ships. When the fighting finally ended, the Korthok fleet was in full retreat. Half of their ships had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The survivors limped away into deep space, carrying news of their defeat back to the Empire. On New Harmony, the crystal cities were damaged, but not destroyed. More importantly, the Zelhari people were safe. They had survived their second encounter with the Korthok Empire. This time they had not been alone, as rescue ships arrived to help with repairs. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy. The impossible had happened. Someone had not only stood up to the Korthok Empire, but had defeated them in open battle. War Master. Vector had learned a painful lesson about humans. They were not the weak creatures he had thought them to be. Humans promised to protect their friends. They meant every word. But Vector's pride would not let him accept defeat. As his damaged fleet returned to Korthok space, the reptilian commander was already planning his revenge. Next time, he would bring even more ships. Next time, he would show the galaxy that the Korthok Empire could not be defeated. He had no idea that his defeat at New Harmony was just the beginning of the end for his empire. The news traveled fast across the galaxy. Within days, every space station, every trading post, and every alien homeworld knew what had happened at New Harmony. The humans had defeated the mighty Korthok Empire in open battle. Captain Alex Turner, who had been promoted after his brave actions in the battle, is now meeting with alien leaders who had never spoken to humans before. These species had been hiding from the Korthok for years, too scared to fight back. Now they wanted to know if the stories about human protection were true. Alex sat across from Commander Thekvar, proud warrior from the Vorthok species. The Vorthok looked like large cats that walked on two legs. They had been famous fighters before the Korthok conquered their world 20 years ago. "My people remember when we were free," Thekvar said in his deep voice. "The Korthok took our weapons and made us work in their factories, but we never forgot how to fight." Alex leaned forward. "If you want to be free again, humanity will help you. But you have to be willing to fight for your own freedom too."
Thekvar's
cat-like eyes gleamed with hope. "My warriors are ready. We have been waiting for someone strong enough to stand with us against the reptiles." Similar meetings were happening. All across human space, species that had suffered under Korthok rule were secretly reaching out to humanity. The aquatic Deloni offered their advanced medical technology in exchange for protection. The insect-like Hiver colonies wanted to share their engineering skills with human builders. But the most important meeting happened on Earth itself. Ambassador Tony Clark was once again addressing the Galactic Council, but this time the mood was very different. Many of the alien representatives who had been quiet before were now speaking up. They had seen what humans could do when they kept their promises. Some species were asking to join the growing alliance against the Korthok Empire. Tony stood at the speaking platform. But today he was not alone. Representatives from 6 different species stood with him. Together, they announced the formation of the Free Species Alliance. "The days of the Korthok Empire are numbered," Tony declared. "No longer will bullies be allowed to terrorize innocent worlds. Any species that wants freedom can find it with us." In the Korthok section of the council hall, Ambassador Sekthan looked worried for the first time. His empire was losing control of the galaxy. Dozens of species were talking about rebellion. Of course, they now had humans to help them fight back. In Korthok space, War Master Vector was planning his revenge. The defeat at New Harmony had made him angry, but it had also taught him not to underestimate humans. This time, he would bring overwhelming force. Vector called together every Korthok fleet in the Empire. He demanded ships from every conquered world. He even hired mercenary fleets from criminal organizations. The force he assembled was the largest military fleet in galactic history. "This time, we will not just defeat the humans," Vector told his assembled commanders. "We will destroy their entire civilization. We will turn their worlds into ash and sell their survivors as slaves." The Korthok chose their target carefully. They would attack the Crimson Nebula, a region of space where many of the Human Alliance fleets were gathering. If they could destroy the Allied forces there, they could stop the rebellion before it really started. Meanwhile, Admiral Helen Torres was preparing for what everyone knew would be the final battle. She had ships from 8 different species under her command. Human vessels with crystal shields fought alongside Vorthok warcruisers and Deloni. Medical ships that had been converted to carry weapons. Helen stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, studying the latest intelligence reports her scouts had found the massive Korthok fleet moving toward the Crimson Nebula. The enemy force was 3 times larger than anything the Alliance could field. "Admiral," said her tactical officer, "the enemy fleet will reach us in 6 hours. Should we retreat and regroup?" Helen shook her head. "If we run now, the Korthok will hunt down every world in our alliance one by one. This is where we make our stand." As the hours passed, ships from across the galaxy arrived to join the battle. Even species that were not officially part of the Alliance sent small fleets to help. They had all suffered under Korthok oppression, and this was their chance for revenge. The battle began when the 2 massive fleets met in the swirling gases of the Crimson Nebula. The space between the stars lit up with weapons fire as thousands of ships fought. For the future of the galaxy, Helen commanded her forces with brilliant tactics. She used the nebula's gas clouds to hide smaller ships that could attack the larger Korthok vessels from unexpected directions. The Alliance ships worked together like parts of a single machine. But the real advantage came from something the Korthok had never understood. The Alliance ships were not fighting for conquest or profit. They were fighting for freedom. Every crew member knew that losing this battle meant slavery for their families and children. The Vorthok warriors fought with the fury of 20 years of oppression. The Deloni used their knowledge of biology to target weak points in Korthok ship designs. The Zelhari crystal technology made Alliance shields stronger than anything the reptiles had ever faced. Captain Ben Price led a squadron of fast attack ships deep into the Korthok formation. His mission was to reach Vactura's flagship and take out the enemy commander. It was extremely dangerous, but Ben had volunteers from every species in the Alliance. As Ben's ships raced through the battle, dodging explosions and enemy fire, they could see the Dark Talon ahead of them. The massive Korthok flagship was heavily defended. But Ben had a plan. The Zelhari had taught human engineers how to overload crystal energy cores. Ben's ship carried a special crystal bomb that could destroy any ship it touched. But someone would have to get very close to the enemy flagship to use it. "I'll take the bomb in myself," Ben told his crew over the radio. "Get ready to retreat once I make my run." But Song of Steel and Stars, the Zelhari warrior who served as Ben's second in command, had a different idea. "Captain, let me do this. My people started this war when we asked for your help. Let us finish it." Before Ben could stop him, Song of Steel and Stars took a small fighter craft and flew straight at the Dark Talon. The crystal being's ship glowed brighter and brighter as he overloaded his energy core. The explosion that followed lit up the entire nebula. Vactor's flagship simply vanished in a ball of crystal fire. With their leader dead and their command ship destroyed, the Korthok fleet began to fall apart. All across the battlefield, Korthok ships started to retreat. Some tried to surrender, but most just ran for the edge of the nebula as fast as they could go. The mighty empire that had terrorized the galaxy for decades was finally broken. In the days that followed, victory at Crimson Nebula sparked rebellions. On every world the Korthok had conquered, enslaved populations rose up against their oppressors. Knowing that the Alliance would come to help them, Captain Alex Turner led rescue fleets to dozens of prison worlds, freeing millions of aliens who had been slaves for years. Each liberated world joined the Free Species Alliance, making it stronger and safer for everyone. The Galactic Council held an emergency session to deal with the collapse of the Korthok Empire. For the first time in galactic history, slavery was completely banned. Any species that tried to enslave others would face the combined might of the Alliance. Ambassador Tony Clark addressed the council one final time. "The galaxy has learned an important lesson," he said. "When good people work together, bullies cannot win. When we protect each other, we are all stronger." As Tony spoke, representatives from over 50 species stood and applauded. The age of empires built on fear and oppression was over. A new era of cooperation and freedom had begun. On Earth, President Karen Williams received reports from across the galaxy. Humans were no longer just one small species trying to survive. They had become the protectors of the innocent and the defenders of the weak. The warning humanity had given to the galaxy had been proven true. When someone harmed their friends, humans would bring their wrath. But more importantly, humans had shown that their friendship was worth having. The galaxy would never forget the lesson. Hurt the innocent and humanity would stop you, but ask for help and humanity would stand with you until the end.